Good morning. The girl effect, that may be new to some of you, and if it is, I hope it has the impact on you that it had on me when I first saw it a couple of years ago. Investing in girls is smart. It is central to boosting development, breaking the cycle of intergenerational poverty, and allowing girls, and then women, 50% of the world's population, to lead better, fairer, and more productive lives. And I was reading that closely from my notes because that was Bob Zoellick, the president of the World Bank, speaking at the annual meetings of the World Bank in September 2011. There are 600 million adolescent girls in the world. 250 million of those adolescent girls live in extreme poverty. And we at the Nike Foundation, and we're not alone, believe that they are a huge untapped resource of development opportunity for the world. We promote something called the Girl Effect Dividend, and I'll be saying a little bit more about that. But we know, and having crunched the numbers with the World Bank and others, and produced something which is available on our website, which I can show you afterwards, the girls completing secondary school, if every girl in Kenya completed secondary school, it would add $27 billion to the Kenyan economy over their lifetimes. With nearly 4 million adolescent mothers annually, India loses $383 billion of productivity over the lifetime of those girls as they become women. I could go on. There are examples for every country about what we believe is the girl effect dividend, this combination of preventing early marriage, keeping girls in school. That usually then delays first birth, but they also, because they've completed school, become economically empowered and are able to work and provide a better life for themselves, their children are healthier, and then their families, their communities, their countries. So the evidence for investing in girls is very clear. So why is the world's largest and most successful sportswear company investing in adolescent girls in Africa and elsewhere, and in markets where Nike as a company doesn't make anything and doesn't sell anything? Why did I move, as we heard in my introduction, thank you for the warm introduction, why did I move from running the British government's largest development program in the world in Ethiopia to the Nike Foundation? The British government and the DFID, the Department for International Development, and its development program is doing things which are proven and it has a track record and is measurable. The Nike Foundation right now has a hunch. So I moved from something which was pretty certain, and I could see what we were doing and what we were changing over time, to an organization which is making some bets about the girl effect. And how can you support the girl effect? In late 1997, the Nike Corporation, as you will recall, was going through a labor standards crisis involving women and children and men in factories in the supply chains in various parts of the world. Maria Eitel, who is the president of the foundation, was called in by the company to clean it up. She spent 5 or 6 years doing that and created what is now the sustainable business and innovation part of the Nike business, which runs right through everything that Nike as a company does. But the challenge Maria faced was 800,000 workers in 46 countries in 600 factories, none of which Nike actually owned or controlled. So it was an enormous task. And the approach to that was actually not just to clean up the supply chains, both labor standards and environment-wise, of Nike, but actually to raise the standards of an entire industry. And that is work which is ongoing. And that's another story which I'm not going to tell this morning. I could do, but I won't. But in 2002, exhausted after 5 years of firefighting and wrestling with the company to get it to where it is, the journey it began then and is now today in terms of environmental and social and labor standard responsibility, Maria said, enough. I've done my bit. Others now need to take this work on. And the founder and majority owner of Nike, Phil Knight, said to her, what do you want to do next? And she said, I want us to do more to give back. Now, Nike as a company is in the field of human potential. And if you look back to the roots of Nike in the early 70s in Oregon, it's all about maximizing human potential on the sports field, on the playing field. And Maria, through the work she did on the labor standards and environmental issues, had opened her eyes dramatically to the state of women and girls particularly, in many developing countries. So she said to Phil, give me some time, let me go away and work out what it is that I think we should do with the Nike Foundation. She traveled the world for a year. She immersed herself in all sorts of places all over the world, from the richest to the poorest, and with Nobel laureate economists and others. And she came back a year later to the board and said, this is the idea I have for the Nike Foundation. that we should focus on eliminating global poverty. And they said, check, that's about the sort of ambition the company has. We agree, go do it. And then she said, but we're going to do it through a unique approach and with a unique focus. The unique approach is a leverage model. I'll say more about that. And the unique focus is on adolescent girls, because her travels and those she had sat with had taken her back to some of the roots of poverty and where poverty becomes entrenched and intergenerational. And as you saw on the Girl Effect film just now, if we can catch girls when they're 12, before it's too late for many of them, we can change their lives and then the lives of their children, their families, their communities, and generation which follow them. So the board said to Maria, and she tells the story obviously better than I because she was in the room and I wasn't, but at that moment when the Nike board was predominantly male, and it's a sports company, so it's pretty testosterone pump board. I've experienced it. She sat there and she said, I want to take the Nike Foundation and focus on poor adolescent girls in parts of the world where we don't make anything, and we won't do anytime soon, and we don't sell anything, and we won't do anytime soon. And they said, great. But they said, if you're right, we're going to give you 3 things, and if you're right, that's all you'll need. They said, we'll give you some money. So the Nike company, the parent company, finances us. But they said, we won't give you the sort of money that the Gates Foundation has or some of the other very big corporate foundations. We'll give you enough money. We'll give you some of our best people. So when the foundation started 8 years ago, a small number of people, some of Nike's best creative designers, branding people, comms people, moved across from the company into the foundation. And we'll give you the Nike brand name. And that, to the company, is priceless. It's a big part of what Nike is about, and it opens doors. And the reason why that was important is because the company has 7 or 8 different philanthropic strands of work that it does, and the Nike Foundation, which focuses solely on adolescent girls and promoting the Girl Effect, is the only Nike philanthropic initiative which has the brand name. So they said, we'll give you a little bit of money, a few of our best people, and we'll give you the brand name for the foundation. So in the early years of the foundation, the focus was very much about getting girls on the global agenda and then driving massive resources to them. The pictures you see here are in a forum with the World Bank and Melinda Gates and others. The Clinton Global Initiative and the Clinton Foundation is one of our partners. The bottom left-hand corner is a plenary session at Davos. In fact, there may not be a plenary session. We had a plenary at Davos the year before last where we played that video. And then bottom right-hand corner, some of you may recognize Andrew Mitchell, who is the UK International Development Secretary, my former boss. And we have a partnership with the British government. And I'll say a little bit later about how that partnership came to be my route into what I'm doing now and why I believe so strongly in what the Nike Foundation is trying to pull off. So initial focus to get girls on the global agenda and drive massive resources to them. What we're now doing, and have done for the last year or so, is really refining what we call in Nike speak, and a lot of our language comes from the company, our integrated offense. So everything starts with the girl. I said earlier that we have a hunch, and we do have a hunch, that delaying marriage, keeping girls in school, etc., adds up to something called the girl effect. We also have a hunch that if we can reach 1 in 5, so 50 million of those 250 million girls in absolute poverty, that we can get to tipping point with the girl effect and unleash this incredible potential that adolescent girls have. But we as a foundation don't actually do any of those things which we think combine to be the girl effect. We don't build schools, we don't build clinics, we don't employ people and create economic opportunity for them. So what is it that we as a foundation uniquely do? Well, we combine, and the reason why there's an image of a girl at the center of this is girls are at the center of absolutely everything we do. So we combine girl learning networks, social communications, innovative solutions in developing countries, and advocacy in specific places, using many of the tools that has made Nike a very successful sportswear company. Everything starts with a girl. That is a picture of me, actually, struggling with a 20-litre can of water, doing something called a girl-led learning journey in 90-degree heat in rural Ethiopia. That was hard work, and the girl who usually does that 5 or 6 times a day, who wakes at 5, goes to bed at 11, and works most of that day, is there in the background behind me. Now, I spent a day with her to walk in her shoes to better understand the challenges that she faces, opportunities where they are, but to really immerse in her life. Now, a day is not a particularly deep immersion, and we go and we do it for longer in some cases. But that's one of the things we do, is make sure and get it as close as we can to girls to better understand their lives and the challenges they face, but the opportunities there are to change things within their lives that can help them take opportunity that is there. On innovation, we look for the most creative local people and organizations to innovate and to innovate catalytic solutions for girls. So we sometimes seed scale solutions. We did some work in northern Ethiopia on early marriage, and in the course of 4 or 5 years have completely changed the approach to early marriage in one community of 15,000 girls, and then leverage other partners to pay to take that to scale with 200,000 girls in the Amhara region of Ethiopia, which has some of the highest prevalence of early marriage in the world. The image there is actually Discover the Hero Around You was a conversation. It's an image representing a conversation we started in Ethiopia, and I'll show you a little later where that work is now taking us in Ethiopia. But it was a conversation about things which are centuries-old social and cultural conditions and issues, which we provoke a conversation around a different role of adolescent girls. So the community, the girls see themselves differently, but their parents and the community also see them differently. Bottom right-hand corner, Nyaminga in Rwanda. We build girl-inspired brands. This sometimes feels like probably our major core competence and quite uniquely what we bring, I think, to the development space in Africa at the moment, but we have plans to go beyond there quite soon. But we use brands to drive behavioral change. And in the first instance, in many of these countries, that's actually creating an adolescent identity, a teenage identity, because in many countries, in Rwanda, where this Nyaminga is happening, is a very good example of where girls go from being girls to being women. And there isn't really an identity. They don't have a teenage years. So from the age of about 11 or 12, they become women, and then often marry, leave school, etc., and the rest unfolds as I've already outlined. So we use our branding and our communications expertise to create a movement, that conversation, a teenage identity. We get girls talking to each other, but we also get their parents, their fathers particularly, their community leaders, the government and others engaged in that conversation and provoking something of a behavioral change movement. And we use that branding to sort of be the umbrella beneath which other activities which we do sit. And finally, influence. This is also actually taken in Rwanda. Some of you will recognize President Paul Kagame. I was in Rwanda a few weeks ago with 3 of the most senior executives from the Nike board. That's a picture of a guy called Charlie Denson, who's the brand president at Nike. And President Kagame is a full supporter of what we're doing, to the extent, actually, when we opened up, when we started working in Rwanda, we started working out of the presidency. Now, I know from having worked for the British government and DFID for many years, there are pros and cons of being of how closely associated one wants to be with governments, but Kagame is very much in the right place in terms of adolescent girls and what he thinks they can unleash, and he's a full supporter and a major international proponent for us of the girl effect. So why did I move from a world where I was comfortable, I was doing okay, I felt I was making a difference, I had huge resources at my disposal to the whole range of assistance we're providing in Ethiopia as DFID, from humanitarian through to social safety nets, health, education, water and sanitation, climate change, economic empowerment, good governance, etc., etc. You name it, we were probably doing it. In fact, we were trying to, for many times, trying to do slightly less. Why did I move from that world, where I had a team in Ethiopia, which was only a little bit smaller than the entirety of the Nike Foundation, as we're currently sized? Well, I moved because I saw the opportunity of this unique intervention around behavioral change. If the Nike Foundation does anything, we're in the business of behavioral change. And I saw the investments that the traditional aid industry in health and education and many other things were having tremendous impact. But over generations, or over many decades, there were some things they hadn't managed to shift, and we hadn't managed to shift. And therefore, I saw some of this teenage identity, and particularly around girls, as a real key in shifting the behaviors of people around girls, as well as girls themselves, but it's actually around girls, could actually unleash the girl effect, but could actually keep girls in school, delay their marriage, etc., etc. So I was very excited by that possibility. Sitting in Ethiopia, I saw the development space becoming more and more crowded with not just the traditional OECD development players, the World Bank, the UN, Europeans, etc., but I also saw a lot of private funds and foundations coming in to the development space, and the increasing engagement of new state actors, China, India, some of the Arab states, etc., getting involved in Africa's development, which my personal view is a fantastic thing. But each of those groups, and there are many other groups, Each of those groups does development differently and approaches development differently. And I was very excited by the opportunity to move across to the Nike Foundation with a much faster approach, a much higher risk appetite, something of a venture capitalist appetite, if you like, for investing in things and taking chances on a hunch, making bets on a hunch that I felt sometimes unable to do, obviously with taxpayers' money that I was the steward of in my previous job. So that's why I moved across to the Nike Foundation. And I want to say a little bit about how some of you probably already are supporting the Girl Effect, and some of you may not even know you're supporting it. But there may also be things that you can do and we can do together that we can work together to unleash the Girl Effect. I think what's really important here is the request isn't that every organisation or people get involved in things that are specifically for girls. It's much more about making sure that any projects, any programs, any businesses, any interventions, any policies, whether you're a government or a private sector player or a donor or an NGO, that you are thinking about adolescent girls. Because my experience, having run programs that were providing basic services to 60 million people across Ethiopia, run them, finance them, is that many of those programs do great things, but with some nuancing at the margins, and it is at the margins, you can do even greater things and get much greater value for money for your investment. And so that I say it with my former donor hat on, but also I think for the private sector, for NGOs, for governments and others. So it's almost looking under the hood. I now call the bonnet a hood because I live in America. And by the way, I used to call Nike Nike as well, but that's been put straight for me. But looking under the hood of what you're doing and saying, well, firstly, do no harm for adolescent girls, but are there things you're doing that you could do slightly differently? And it's not always actually indirect with adolescent girls. It might be you employ women, which is great. And those women may well be, unbeknownst to you, role models for adolescent girls. Now, if those women are role models, it might encourage girls to stay in school. It might give them an incentive if they see women doing well in the workplace. And that doesn't necessarily mean leading the organisation. It can just be actually having a job, which gives them all sorts of freedoms, which many women in developing countries don't have. If you're a development agency, I think it's probably slightly clearer. Girls will decide, I believe, 4 of the Millennium Development Goals. So are your programs adequately focused and nuanced to capture adolescent girls and making sure that you're getting maximum value for money around those investments? And private donors, again, it's about investments and maximising their potential. There's much more I could say about that, but I want to rush to the end because I want to get a chance for a conversation, and I'm sure I provoked some comments and questions from you. But it's just ask the question. Look under the hood and ask the question, is every project, programme, policy, intervention, business you're setting up or involved in, every partnership, just be thinking about adolescent girls. And if you need help and you need tools to do that, we have a lot of those at our disposal. So what's next? Well, what we're now trying to do is to take the hunch and do more with it. So it feels to me right now, as I build out the business, that we are laying the tracks in front of the train as we go, hoping that the hunch behind us is proven. But because what we're doing is actually going to be generational or intergenerational, that won't actually be proven for a while. We're right now focusing a lot of our effort on building in not just benchmarking, but how we measure behavioural change. The holy grail for us is what does it cost to change, for a unit of behavioural change for a particular individual or to unleash the Girl Effect. But as we build out the tracks in front of us and we take some risk, we are still betting on the hunch and the bets behind us. So we're taking bigger and bigger bets while we hope that those behind us come in. We currently have programming. I showed some in Rwanda. We are developing a program in Ethiopia. I'll show you that in a moment. Nigeria, where we're working in northern Nigeria, or trying to, which is incredibly hard because of the insecurity in northern Nigeria. But ultimately, we want to get to 50 million girls, like I said earlier, which is a global effort. So we're also looking at our business model. And we're young. We're 6 or 7 years old. And we're looking at how we go from where we are now in 3 countries to something that genuinely becomes a global movement, and we together unleash the Girl Effect. It's a privilege to be here this morning and have this opportunity to speak to you. It's great to be back among some old friends and already have met some, what I hope will be new friends. And we're always looking for ideas and for partners, etc. We've already had a couple of conversations this morning where we're trying to do things in environments where we don't have much experience as the Nike Foundation. Some of us in the foundation have different experience in Africa and Asia and beyond. But to be honest, we don't have masses of experience. And when we're trying to do things which either use digital platforms or analog platforms to inspire behavioral change, we are looking for new partners. I've had a couple of great conversations already this morning, which may lead somewhere in terms of some of the things we're looking at. We're also trying to build or trying to do things where capacity doesn't exist. And I know from my former work where just in health and education, just the education professionals and health professionals and others in developing countries, capacity is a huge issue. Building that capacity, retaining that capacity, training, etc., is a big issue. But what we're trying to do with some of this work in this space, the branding, etc., there's almost no capacity for some of these things in the way that we need to do this. And so, we are grappling right now with issues around our business model because we have quite a high-touch approach right now to some of this stuff because we've had to get it off the ground and get it moving in a way that happens at the right time with the complementary investments being done by others, that this thing combines to unleash the girl effect. And we're grappling right now with some very big questions about, we can't do what we do in 50 countries because we don't have that resource. We would need to be as big as the parent company, which I don't think the board would be too happy about right now. So we have a whole bunch of issues, and I look forward to mingling with the rest of you during the course of the day and just, and networking with you afterwards to learn from you as we build out this business based on a hunch. That's the girl effect. Thank you.